Hey guys, this is the March go2hx Roundup. It's a new format that I want to try to give a high-level view of the project and all of its progression since last month. I'm hoping to put a spotlight on contributions, maybe a little bit of behind the scenes, and also show a trajectory of what's to come next. For those that don't know what go2hx is, it's a transpiler that takes the Go programming language and transpiles it into hex code. Its primary intention is to be used by hex developers to import Go libraries into their hex projects. Next thing up that's important for April is that the logo will be changing. This is in order to reflect the project's new, more ambitious outlook for goals. But first, I want to cover the conception of go2hx and how I want to look at it going forward. So before, I would talk a lot about the how the project works, what language it is, the other things, but I didn't necessarily mention as much about the why. And for a lot of people, that made it quite confusing to understand because Hex projects, especially compiler ones, are Hex targets. So they turn Hex into a given other programming language. And for this being the reverse, it's a little bit tricky to figure out how it plays and what how it can be used from a Hex developer standpoint. So this is what I want to improve on. And so now looking at it from the why standpoint, it's in order to import Go libraries into your Hex projects, as I said before, and it will have only Hex as a necessary dependency, and it will produce multi-target hex code and be heavily tested. The how will still be important, but it will be second hand to the why. And so with regards to the ambitious goals, NetHTTP is the ambitious goal that I want to cover. This is because I/O recently is working, which I'll talk about after. And because of that, I think it's time to no longer focus about passing simply to pass more tests, but instead to put the projection of the project and put it on a goal and a roadmap that is a little bit ambitious, but also reasonable, and that the project can 100% hit. And now that's the case with an HTTP. And it was also the main reason why I started the project is I wanted Hex to be able to become a backend language. And so one of the ways that I've managed to see Hex as a backend language is I successfully wrote a Hex HTTP web server by scratch, but it was hash link only and it was missing a lot of things, as one would expect, working on it for only a week. But I also noticed that there's not really a good solution out there that's mature for the backend if you're not going to rely on some other infrastructure like Node.js, for example. There's no real native Hex solution to be able to make a HTTP web server. And so with version 2, I'd like to take NetHTTP, import NetHTTP as if it's a Hex library, and this will allow WebLink version 2 to be multi-target and allow all the features that come with it. Next up is the stats for March. So March has been quite the interesting month. A lot more closed issues than new issues, which is good. There's been a lot of cleaning up. And then another thing with regards to cleaning up has been the deletions, 368,000. It's been quite substantial over the additions, and that's because the the TZ data, which is the time zone data that's used in the Go standard library, has now been removed. It was getting added into the go2hx standard library in a really atrocious way. So yeah, we'll add it back later, but in a much cleaner and better way. So there's that. Next up is that go2hx has reached 120 stars. This is really, really exciting news to me because especially given that since the release of 0.1, it's been at a much different trajectory, be it with interest and eyeballs looking at the project. So I'm very grateful for that, and yeah, the community that we've managed to build up a little bit on the Discord, and also some of the issues getting made, and the contributions that I'll cover next is just it's fantastic. So yeah, very happy with that. So contribution wise, Mackay added port gambling, or sorry, removed port gambling, my bad. And this is quite cool. So for those that don't know, go2hx has a Go component and a Hex component, and they talk to each other over TCP sockets. And the Hex part was giving it a random port to be able to communicate across, but it would run into this issue of if the port it chose was actually already being used, then it would simply exit the program, and you'd have to run it again and try and get a random port that actually didn't, that wasn't being used. So Mackay made a solution for that. We had back and forth because there's some issues with Mac OS, and then Zeta came along really nicely and added some really good feedback or really good information that you can use the zero port, and the operating system will automatically pick it, an available port is that can be used. So now we're using that, and port gambling is now gone. And so thank you both Mackay and Zeta for this. Next up is that the IO standard library is passing. This is really, really big news given that IO is a massive standard library that's used across so many different parts as a core piece for OS, for networking operations, and for all types of different compressions and everything else. And it implements the bytes reader and writer, which is used almost everywhere. So yeah, this is great. And in order to implement this, we had to re-implement channels. And this is nice because now channels are more stable, which is really nice, but it's threaded only, so only targets that have thread support can access it, and it still has a few more bugs. But it's getting there, and this has really opened the door for a lot more code to work, so I'm quite happy with that. Next up is that Yasin has made more and more issues, which has been quite nice. He's been very active this month, and he's been covering all the cases that you can imagine for Go language translation issues. So from taking the Go language and then trying to translate it into the Hex equivalent, he's even though this is by far the most stable part of go2hx, he's been able to find more and more cases, which has been quite nice, and putting it in a really nice format for me and other people to fix it. So, and then to illustrate how well his methodology has been working, he actually managed to hit a Go compiler bug, which is just really cool. And yeah, it came initially from testing in go2hx, and then he tested it again in the same type of bug in another compiler, and then that compiler then realized it's actually a Go bug. So yeah, and this is him now mentioning that, hey, I found it initially in the go2hx transpiler. So really cool. Finally, I want to talk about Elliot Stoneham's unsafe standard library implementation. So he did amazing work conceptualizing this and making a part that we honestly didn't think would be possible. We always thought that go2hx would have a subset, and unsafe would be either limited or not able to be transpiled. But because of this new virtual memory system that Elliot has developed, it's now possible to do it. It's still not in a branch or it's not in a branch, or it's not in master yet, but it's getting there, and there's a lot of really good thinking behind it. And yeah, the biggest thing that we're missing right now is that we need to figure out a way how to check when unsafe is being used or not in a given code base, and then enable or disable it in those specific regions, because it has a performance cost and it adds more boilerplate. So we're working on it, but yeah, thank you, Elliot, for this. Next up, we have the demo. So this is something I'm really excited about. We have now the ability to call the net standard library and just use it in hex code, just normal hex code. And as you can see, it's not actually that difficult. You just grab the library go2hx, which pulls in the standard library. This is in hash link, and yeah, it's just a server Well, it's a socket, but it's listening, so it's a server-based socket, and it's waiting for a TCP connection. So I make a little buffer, and then I can grab the data. So if I send hello world over it, over port 8000, then you can see it. Here it is, it's showing up. So yeah, really cool. Then I'd like to thank the contributors for March. I also added Aiden Lee because I think it's a notable case of him putting some work behind trying to get go2hx working in C++. I raised an issue on the Discord, and he was really nice to go and try and discover what the issue is and how to fix it. And so yeah, thank you, Aiden, for that. And for the rest, yeah, I I really appreciate the contributions. It's been really fantastic to see the energy and the interest behind the project. So yeah. And lastly, I'd like to thank you guys for listening. Um, yeah, it's been an absolute joy. It hasn't even been 2 months yet since the zero point 0.1 release, and there's so much interest with the project and so many great prospects and opportunities. And I'm really happy to be able to share this. Yeah, so on to next month. And for those that are interested perhaps in contributing or looking behind the scenes, you can always join the Hacks Discord and the go2hx channel. You can join and talk to us there. And yeah, even if you're a little bit scared that it's a compiler and you've never touched a compiler before or anything else, first off, you might be surprised how easy it is actually to work on it, especially if it's a part that you're interested in. So, maybe try it out, see if it can compile the code that you're interested about, be it a library, be it Go code if you know how to write Go. Um, yeah, and just try it out and see. Um, there's lots of interesting problems to look through, and also it's written in Hack, so if you're a Hacks developer, that might also be enticing. So, yeah. But yeah, regardless, thank you so much for tuning in, and on to next month. Cheers.